The fact is that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes in a relationship. Trust is something that's earned, and it's something that's built over time, incrementally. Hi, this is Jim Brillon, and welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about all things mental health. Today I'm going to be talking about how do you rebuild trust in a relationship when it's been broken. Trust in a relationship is really one of the three main ingredients that you have to have. In any kind of healthy relationship, you have to like that person, you have to respect that person, and you have to be able to trust them. And it has to be mutual. The fact is that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes in relationships. None of us can be 100% emotionally available for our partners at all times. But when trust starts to diminish or falter in a relationship, there has to be an active process of rebuilding it. Trust is something that's earned, and it's something that's built over time, incrementally, through little moments. In a lot of ways, the way that you build trust is through those small moments, those little opportunities to turn toward your partner instead of away from them. Noticing if your partner looks sad, asking them about their feelings, or recognizing what it is that they need. Helping with the dishes without being asked. It just lets that person know that you're there for them and that they can trust you. Trust happens in a couple of different ways. There's something called functional trust, where you know that that person is going to do what they say they're going to do. That if they say they're going to call, they'll call, or if they're going to pick you up or make a commitment, that they're going to follow through with it. That's functional trust. There's also relational trust, and that means that you know that that person is safe for you to be vulnerable with. Vulnerability is a really tricky feeling because we resist vulnerability often because it makes us feel scared. It makes us feel vulnerable. And especially for men in our culture, we're trained not to allow ourselves to be too vulnerable and not to express certain emotions. And that's why it's really important for men in the culture to have women in their lives, because honestly, women often teach men about emotional intelligence. They help men to develop language for their feelings. And hopefully you can continue to develop that ability to be vulnerable, because that's also the way that we create deeper connection and intimacy. So the way that trust is built in a relationship is through small moments and taking those little opportunities to turn towards your partner rather than away from them. It's recognizing when your partner is sad and asking them about it. How are you feeling? Tell me what's going on. It's showing up and helping without being asked to. Those are the little tiny ways that you show that you care, and it leads to feeling cherished, cared for, and that's how you build trust. Trust is not something that once you establish it, once you get it, it's sort of like a trophy that you can put on your mantle and say, look, I've got trust. Trust, like self-esteem, is something that waxes and wanes. Sometimes we feel very trusting, and sometimes we don't. And if there's a rupture in a relationship, it has to be addressed, and the trust has to be rebuilt. The fact is that we all make mistakes, and the difference between successful relationships and the ones that really struggle is how you repair the ruptures when they happen. The great big ruptures and the small ruptures. That's sort of the difference between the masters and the disasters, so to speak. So when you need to repair a rupture in a relationship, there's three things that you want to think about and address. You need to atone, you need to attune, and you need to attach. What that means is, atoning means that you have to own the mistake that you've made. Now, especially if it's something like an affair, which is one of the biggies, that really destroys trust in a relationship. The person who was the cheater or the offending party, they need to really own what they've done and not blame the other person for it. Well, if you were only, this, then I wouldn't have had to. None of that. You have to really own it and atone for the affair or atone for the mistake that you've made. That means that you honestly and authentically apologize and you're not defensive about it. It means that you talk about it so your partner doesn't have to. If there's been a rupture in a relationship, if there's been a break of trust, and the person who was betrayed is always talking about it, always bringing it up, a lot of times that's a sign that the person who did the offense in the first place is not talking about it enough. And if you make an apology for something that you've done, you have to be specific. In other words, it's not enough to say, I really apologize for everything that I've done to hurt you. That doesn't really let the person know that you get what you did to hurt them. You have to apologize for betraying you. You have to apologize for the way that I've hurt you emotionally, the way that I've broken trust, the way that I've betrayed you. You've got to use those types of words. You've got to use that kind of language so that the person you're apologizing to knows what the heck you're apologizing for. You don't want to rationalize. You don't want to blame. And you have to recognize that your partner is going to be triggered and they're going to be angry. Hopefully, over time, if you show that you're willing to atone for the mistakes that you've made or the rupture you've created, that anger can subside. And you have to give the other person time to grow willing to forgive. Sometimes if there's an affair, the other person needs to know also what happened. Why did it happen? This is the part where it gets really tricky because sometimes you don't really want to know all of those details. So you have to be careful about the questions that you ask because some of the answers can be really difficult. And rebuilding trust after an affair might mean that you give your partner access to your social media, your contacts, your credit cards, and that you make your whole life an open book for a period of time so that the other person can start to verify that you're being trustworthy. And that is one of the ways that trust is rebuilt. You have to follow through with commitments. And yeah, it's going to really suck to do that. And it's also important. The next part is learning how to attune to your partner. And both people need to, what I mean by attuning is that's the desire and the ability to understand and respect your partner's inner world. One way that you can do that is through getting to know your partner's inner world. And there's an exercise that we do in couples counseling sometimes called love maps. A love map is, love mapping is when two people sit down and they ask each other questions. Tell me about, your biggest dream in life. Tell me about the one person that you admire the most. Tell me about your greatest fear. Maybe you know some of those things, maybe you don't. And that's one way that you can start to build deeper connection if both people are sharing that information. That's sort of like getting back to the early stages in a relationship, when you were starting to fall in love and you're going through the limerence phase where you talk on the phone for hours at a time, getting to know each other. So that's one way to start to attune to each other. And for men, this is the part where it might be difficult because the vulnerability comes up. And a lot of times we're better thinkers than feelers. So we've got to have the courage to allow ourselves to express our deeper thoughts and insecurities and build that intimacy. The third step in rebuilding trust is attaching. And this is going to be really hard for the wounded partner because it's also going to involve reconnecting sexually. And the fact is that if there's been a trust rupture in a relationship and it's been because of infidelity, that relationship that you had is over and you have to rebuild a new relationship. It means taking time to discover what are things that turn you on, what are things that are erotic to you, how and when do you want me to initiate. There has to be lots of communication, and you might struggle, and you're going to need time. But that is the process of rebuilding a sexual relationship after there's been a rupture. When there's been betrayal, what betrayal is, it's turning away from your partner, but also when you start thinking that I could do better. And when you start thinking in a relationship that, why do I put up with this stuff? And, why am I stuck in this relationship? That's what leads to betrayal. And that means that it leads to non-commitment. It can lead to trashing your partner instead of cherishing your partner. It can lead to resentment, lower investment in the relationship, escalating conflict, and lowering your willingness to sacrifice for the relationship. Some of the things that you want to be aware of that can tell you that there's a problem with trust in the relationship is when you start to get overly busy or your partner gets overly busy. One of the leading causes for workaholism is relationship problems. When somebody in the relationship is withdrawing rather than connecting, or when there's imbalance in the relationship, or one or both persons starts engaging in addictive behaviors, whether it's overeating or drinking too much or using substances. When there's a fear of self-disclosure, when there's that sense that I need to protect myself, that's a flashing red light that you don't trust that other person. When you start feeling that fear of commitment, sometimes it's when you start getting really clingy or when you become hyper-independent. So those are some things to look for, to tell you that there's a problem with trust in the relationship. The truth is that trust can be rebuilt in a relationship. Like I say, it's not something that you get once and you have forever. When trust diminishes, you have to actively work to build it up, just like you do with self-esteem. When your self-esteem takes a beating, you have to do everything you can to shore it up. So it is possible to rebuild trust, and often it's a lifelong process of two people deepening their trust in each other and creating a relationship that feels safe, loving, and embracing. I hope the videos are helpful for you. Please like and subscribe, send comments, maybe ask for other videos, things that you might be interested in hearing about. And if you want to contact me, if you're in California, reach out to me at the information in the bio. You can find me on my website, my email, and you can just pick up the phone and give me a call. Thank you.